Hey there, it's Michelle Caruana from Play Cafe Academy and Profitable Play. And in this video, I'm going to answer one of the most common questions I get, and that is what licenses and permits are required in order to open and operate an indoor playground or a play cafe. And I totally get why I get this question so often. It's because this is a very unique industry and there is so much misinformation and so much lack of information about this industry in general. So let's get into it. But first, I just want to tell you a couple things. The first is that I'm going to make this video as concise and to the point as possible. So I'm not going to get into the do's and don'ts, the mistakes to avoid, and the best practices for every single license and permit because we would be here all day. And also, this is going to be very much dependent on where you're located and what your business model specifically looks like. So if you're looking for more help and more guidance in these areas, go to the video description and check out Play Cafe Academy and Playmaker Society because my paid programs have all of the information step by step by step that you need to know. And in Playmaker Society, there have been owners talking about this topic for the last 6 years. So all of those posts are available to you right now. This is one of the most common topics that come up because, again, there are so many nuances and there are so many questions. So myself and 300 other owners would be happy to help you and again, guide you along this process because it can absolutely get confusing. And then next, I just wanted to say that I'm going to start with the licenses and permits that pretty much every business will need in order to operate. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to add some additional licenses and permits that you may not have even thought of that are going to be more dependent on your location and the type of services that you plan to offer. So if you plan to offer alcohol or drop-off services or anything like that, stick around until the end of the video. But without further ado, let's get into the licenses and permits that you will need before opening day. Now, the first is going to be your general business license. So this is going to be where you form your business entity. So if you've heard terms like LLC or S Corp or anything like that, this is where you make that decision and where you file your business entity or form your business. Now, I have a video interview with a lawyer, and she provides a lot better legal advice than I do. I'm not a lawyer. I cannot give legal advice. However, she has a lot of great recommendations around which choice to make regarding, again, LLC, S Corp, things like that. But I also want to encourage you to hire help locally if you need it, especially if you're going to be entering into a business partnership. So if it's going to be you and anyone else running your business, because when you go to form your business entity or LLC, for example, a limited liability corporation, you're going to need something that's called an articles of organization. And basically, this is going to dictate how everything in your business is run between you and your partner or multiple partners. So it's going to outline your responsibilities, any dividend payments, how decisions get made. Anything like that is going to be detailed in your articles of organization. So you really want to make sure that this is well done, highly detailed, and is favorable to everyone involved. Because if anything goes awry, which it often does, unfortunately, in partnerships, everything is going to boil down in terms of litigation, anything like that. If you have to go to court, it's all going to boil down to what is included in your articles of organization. So this is an incredibly important document that you want to get help on if you need it. And if you need help choosing between an S Corp or an LLC, again, I've linked that video with a lawyer in the video description, but I also recommend hiring a local business attorney or a local accountant if you're not quite sure what to do, because again, this is a very personal choice. If your business entity is going to be very simple, so a single member LLC or a very simple S Corp with just you as the owner, you can absolutely do this yourself in just a few minutes online, very inexpensively. And I would recommend doing this as soon as possible. And again, I have that video with a lawyer linked in the video description. I know I sound like a broken record, but if you're not sure what to name it, if you're not sure what to include in your filing or anything like that, or if you're not sure when to file it, or if you're doing it too soon, again, that really quick video is going to be really helpful. And you can get this online typically at your local state website. The very next thing you're going to want to file for after you form your business entity is going to be your federal employer identification number. And this is going to be needed for any business with employees, but you also might need it in order to form a business bank account, to apply for a business loan or a credit card, or apply for a lease or insurance. So this is something that I would just recommend doing regardless of whether or not you plan to have employees from day one. And this is something that you're probably going to get prompted to do right after you file for your business entity, but you're going to get it from the IRS or Internal Revenue Service website. The next thing that you're probably going to need is a zoning permit. Now, this is probably going to happen around the time you're signing your lease. And this is something I would absolutely look into before putting pen to paper and signing a legally binding document. Because unfortunately, depending on your area, if you have to rezone a piece of property for commercial use or in order to be able to operate an indoor playground there specifically, it could take months and months. So if your area is one of those more difficult to navigate areas, you don't want to be stuck paying rent for months and months while you're not able to generate revenue. So make sure before you sign your lease, you look up what that particular space is zoned for, if you can already operate your indoor playground there, and if not, what you need to do in order to obtain that zoning permit. Hopefully you're in an area where it's not too complicated, but again, I've seen so many Playmaker Society members get hung up and really burned financially by this particular point in the opening process. The next thing you're probably going to need is a building permit. And this is going to be true if you're going to be doing new construction or if you're going to be making any significant improvements or changes to an existing space. So if you're going to be adding bathrooms, knocking walls down, things like that, which I generally recommend if you're going to be trying to adapt to a current space. And this is going to ensure that your building complies with all local codes and regulations. And you can get this from your local building department. And this is generally going to be something that an architect needs to file. So again, in general, you're going to hire an architect who's going to work with you to develop your floor plan, come up with where your bathrooms are going to be and how many you might need, where your cafe counter is going to be located, where your check-in is going to be, and then you'll hire a contractor team to bring those visions to life. So as a team, you're going to work to file this building permit so that work can actually begin. Now, once your build out is underway, you're also going to need to apply for a sign permit. And this is also an unexpected place in the opening process where a lot of people get stuck, including myself. We were actually zoned in a historic district, and this put a lot of restrictions on the type of sign we could have. They didn't want any colors, they didn't want any backlighting, and both of these things were very problematic for us as an indoor playground who wanted to catch people's attention as they were driving by. So we had to go through months and months of iterations and getting our sign disapproved and then finally approved. And we ended up having to spend $13,000 on our exterior sign just to make sure it met all of the town board standards, which is who had to approve our sign. Again, it's very specific to your location, who's going to be in charge of approving signs. But again, I wish we could have gotten away with like a $1,000, $2,000 sign. It wasn't the case for us. So this is one of those places in the opening process where if you are zoned in a similar restricted environment, you might have to spend a ton of extra money. So this is something you want to research, again, probably before you sign your lease. The next thing you're going to need is a health department permit. And I put this on the must-have list because if you're watching this video, you probably know how strongly I feel about having at least a very simple cafe and food and drink menu in your facility in order to really maximize profitability. But typically you'll reach out to your local health department, you'll send over your menu and a list of all of your kitchen equipment. And then a couple weeks before opening, they'll come and inspect everything. And then they'll visit you 1 to 2 times a year just to check in and make sure everything is up to par. Now, this one is going to be very dependent on your specific county. So again, even before you sign your lease, you want to make sure you are looking up these regulations and what equipment you need, because depending on your area, you might need a lot more equipment than you anticipate, even for a very basic menu. So before you sign your lease, you want to make sure you have enough space for things like a commercial dishwasher, a mop sink, enough hand washing sinks, and things like that. So reach out to your local health department, let them know what you plan to serve, and they will send you back a list of requirements so that you can really be prepared. The next thing that you're going to need is a fire department permit. And this is going to make sure that you have enough exits, fire extinguishers, sprinklers, things like that. And this is also probably where you're going to determine your building's capacity. I get asked all the time how to figure out what the capacity is for an indoor playground location and how to figure that out. And the answer is you really don't figure it out. You unfortunately have to rely on your local code enforcer or your local fire chief. Again, depending on where you live, it could be a different person. And this is something that you want to talk to your architect about when you're doing your building permit and when you're figuring out your floor plan, because one extra bathroom or one slight wall change could have a massive impact on how many people you can welcome into your space, depending on your local codes and regulations. So make sure your architect, whoever you hire, is very familiar with what you're able to do locally. That is very important. The keyword here is local. So again, when you go to apply for your fire department permit, they're going to look at your floor plan, they're going to come inspect everything, and you're going to work together to determine a capacity for your business. The last on the must-have list is a sales tax permit, and you're going to get this from your state Department of Revenue, and this is just going to allow you to collect sales tax so that you can sell products and services. This is very easy to apply for and takes just a couple minutes. And again, if you're applying for the sales tax license, make sure you do your research and make sure that you are applying sales tax to the correct products and services, depending on where you live, because some states require sales tax on birthday parties and things like that. Some don't. So this is another area where I would hire help from an accountant if you need it, or just make sure you plan to do enough research to make sure everything is above board. And if you're collecting sales tax, you're paying it. Now, some other licenses and permits that may come up in your business planning process, depending on your business model. The first is going to be a liquor license. So if you plan to sell any alcohol or anything like that, you're going to need a liquor license. And this is going to be very expensive or relatively inexpensive, depending on where you live. Again, you need to do your own research here. A lot of states allow for temporary liquor licenses that cover just one specific day or event. And this is what we did for a lot of our Mom's Night Out events and things similar. So if you only plan to serve alcohol, again, a couple times a year, that's something you might want to look into instead of doing a full liquor license. The next thing that you might need is a childcare license. Now, depending on your state regulations, you may be able to offer things like after school care, summer camps, and short-term drop-offs, like 4 hours or less, without a childcare license. However, if part of your main revenue is going to be childcare or drop-off services or anything like that, you may need a childcare license. So that is something that you absolutely want to look into while you're doing your business plan. And you can look for this in your state's Department of Human Services. In some states, it's the health department. It can get a little confusing, but again, make sure you're looking up the rules for your local area. I put insurance as the next thing on your list because you're absolutely going to need it, but the type of insurance that you might need differs depending on your business model. So I have a YouTube video breaking down all of the different types of insurance that you need that I'm going to link in the video description, but you might need things like business liability insurance, you might need workers' compensation, disability, unemployment insurance, and then depending on your actual facility, you might need additional insurances or permits relating to your specific building. So for example, we were right next to a brick oven pizzeria, and that required us to supplement our insurance policy and get a few additional permits. So again, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that you might need to reach out to your specific insurance agent and ask if there's anything else you need to do permit-wise to protect yourself. And the last permit that you might need is a music license. And I'm just going to read from this because it gets really confusing. But basically, if you plan to play music in your facility, you may need to obtain a music license from organizations like ASCAP, BMI, or SESAC. And basically, this license ensures that the composers, songwriters, and artists receive compensation for the public use of their music. Now, again, this can get really complicated, which is why I'm reading from my notes. But to avoid paying for each song individually, which can get very messy, you can subscribe to something like Pandora's commercial streaming service, or Rockbot is another very popular option. Or you can choose to use royalty-free music, which you can find on YouTube, or you can just Google. And while getting caught playing unlicensed music is very unlikely, so for example, if you're just streaming your Spotify playlist, or if you're streaming Apple Music or something like that, that's not allowed in a commercial setting. Getting caught is unlikely. However, if you get caught playing unlicensed music, you could face federal penalties anywhere from $750 to $30,000. And I will say, I have seen competitors specifically report indoor playgrounds for these types of violations. And I've seen a lot of people get really burned because they're paying for personal Spotify or Apple Music subscriptions and then playing it in a commercial setting, which again, they probably didn't even know wasn't allowed. So I did want to throw this in at the end. Make sure any music that you are playing in your facility is licensed for commercial use or that you're paying for one of these services, especially if you have competitors in the area that tend to get a little nasty. All right, that wraps up today's video. If you want to see all of this listed out, I do have a blog linked in the video description just to make sure you have your full checklist and you didn't miss anything. And again, if you want more guidance and personalized help on any of these or throughout the entire opening process, check out Play Cafe Academy and Playmaker Society in the video description. We would absolutely love to have you, and I'd love to help you make your dreams come to fruition. You can also check out my other videos on this channel or the Profitable Play podcast. I'm going to link everything in the video description. All right, I hope you have an amazing week, Playmakers. I will see you soon. Bye for now.